Welcome, listeners or viewers, depending how you're witnessing this grooviness. I'm your host, Joshua Corwin, and you're here with me, with Chad Parenteau, for
Hello?
Assiduous Dust. We're with season 2, and this is episode number dose. And I am so excited to have Chad on today. Here's a little bit about Chad. Shh, don't tell Chad. I'm gonna do my cheat sheet. Chad Parenteau was born in Woonsocket, Rhode Island in 1973 and grew up in Bellingham, Massachusetts. He graduated high school in 1991, believe it or not. He entered Framingham State College, now Framingham State University. It was changed because of him. And majored in English. He learned poetry and prose writing from instructors such as Alan Feldman and Miriam Levine, and studied journalism under Desmond McCarthy. Awesome. Volunteering for the college newspaper, the Gatepost, he wrote articles, columns, and comic strips, so much, serving his junior and senior years as comic editor and living arts editor, respectively, which explains a lot. A finalist for the Framingham State College Marjorie Sparrow Literary Award in 1993, Chad was active at campus literary groups, contributing to the Onyx, which is Framingham State College's literary journal, where he also served as a reader, and Life Underwater, an early literary effort by Boston-based writer, musician, and journalist James O'Brien. Then moving to Boston in 95, he obtained his MFA at Emerson College, studying with Bill Knott, Gail Mazur, and John Skiles. I hope I'm pronouncing that now.
John Scoils, that's okay.
John Scoils, my apologies. His involvement in the small press continued and still does, publishing poetry in Meanie and Shampoo and profile pieces for Lollipop as a comic interpreter and whatnot. He was also an early contributor to Boston's Weekly Dig, focusing on artistic and activist groups and reporting as one of the few print journalists present for events during and after the 2000 presidential debate at UMass Boston. In 2003, Chad self-published his chapter, Self-Portrait in Fire. It is fire, and it was based on his MFA thesis and won a Cambridge Poetry Award. He continues to appear in numerous print and online publications, including anthologies such as French Connections, a gathering of Franco-American poets. In 2007, his poem Moonlighting was on display at Boston City Hall as part of the mayor's prose and poetry program. In 2008, he saw the publication of his third chapbook, Discarded Poems for My Apartments, from Cervena Barba Press. And in 2011, a catalog of his work was added to Framingham State University's alumni collection at the Henry Whitmore Library. Recently, his light verse has appeared in venues as Salon. His first full-length, Petrus Emeritus, was released in June of 2013. Foothills Publishing. It is featured in several venues, including Spoken Word in Nantucket, the Fox Chase Reading Series in Philadelphia, the 17 Poets Reading Series in New Orleans, Brownstone Poets in Brooklyn, and Out of the Blue Art Gallery in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He's the current host and organizer of Stone Soup Poetry, one of the longest running weekly poetry venues in the state, currently virtual. It's great, highly recommended. His contributions to the reading series include creating and editing its online tribute journal, Spoonful, and releasing a limited series of print chapbooks, currently available through the venue. Most recently, he has partnered up Stone Soup with Jason Wright's Oddball Magazine. Jason Wright is also a friend of Oddball Magazine. You can listen and watch him on season 1. And Chad currently serves as associate editor for Oddball Magazine. Thank you so much, Chad. It's lovely to have you here, and you've done so much. So I'm curious, I'm very curious about this. You've recently become involved in more so in the last past years in looking at fake news and kind of uncovering and developing that. I think fake news is a concept we're all too familiar with, unfortunately, and you've become looking at that as research for a lot of small short poems like a Jesus Trump haiku series and other things. How did you get involved in kind of digging up the underbelly of the interweb? How did that start? Did you have that idea one day? What happened? What were you thinking? Why? Give us some insight.
Well, it all started back when I was part of the newspaper, and when you're part of the news, you kind of get the idea. When you're part of any newspaper or any journalistic group, you not only get a sense of why they print certain things, but also why they don't print certain things. I actually, I got to know the inner workings, both good and bad, of an editorial staff while at college, and that taught me a lot moving forward. And then when I actually entered the real world, I spent a few months, a whole summer before I went to grad school, as a stringer for the Woonsocket Call. Even though I still live in Bellingham, Mass, Woonsocket actually covers the greater Woonsocket area, but Bellingham, Massachusetts is somehow part of it. I don't know, but we're only like 10 minutes away from each other. And it was based on that and certain stories that I was allowed to print, and certain stories I was not allowed to print, that I wasn't allowed to print as is. And I did a lot of learning. I found out a lot about why news stories are there, and even people were telling me, do not spend time at this local paper. Get out as soon as you can. And
were they doing what's the reason for that? There wasn't anything notorious going on.
Not notorious, but I think there was a lot of small press journalists who go unthanked, and at that point, journalism was suffering. It's really taken a dovetailed dive downward in recent years. But even in the mid '90s, there were local papers where the reporters were also distributing the papers as well, out of not being able to hire paper boys. That was a dead concept by the early '90s. So you had a lot of people performing a lot of,
especially the advent of the internet and news and TV.
And the internet wasn't even that new. It was still new and still not reliable as a news source. It was when I was on that internet in 1995 or '96. It was a source primarily for Spice Girls gifs and
porn, I guess.
And, well, not only that, but also conspiracy theories. That's where I got my first taste of.
My thesis advisor not for MFA, but for I did my thesis in kind of philosophy and cognitive neuroscience, even though I studied mathematics, believe it or not. But my advisor, Professor Brian Keeley, he specializes in philosophy of conspiracy theory.
Well, the earliest ones I heard of was whether Kurt Cobain was murdered or not. And I've actually been able to follow some of these people over the year. And there's one in particular who tried to get on the ballot in Seattle, and he prided himself on trying to bother the surviving members of Nirvana and like getting arrested. I wish I had his name in front of me. I know I can find him, but it was just very interesting. And recently, amongst my moves, I've been trying to consolidate some of that conspiracy literature. Some of it just seems so ridiculous, but some of it I kept just because these are relics of the time. This can't be. Some of the stuff can't be found. There is a period of the internet where some things, if you did not print them out, would be lost forever.
Right, they're not archived.
Right, and for some people, especially in the early mid '90s, that was probably a good thing because people weren't behaving very well on the internet even then. Now the people who behave that badly are mobilized, and that's what I've kind of noticed over the last few years. My desire in terms of continuing to work for papers, I was trying to do feature pieces because at least then I could take my time doing them. I had a hard time because I always had a daytime job and tried to work at other venues. So features seemed to be the best bet. But I did report on the news whenever I could, but usually that was unless I was very lucky, like with the 2000 protests you just mentioned, when they were chanting "Let Ralph debate." I was like only one of two people who actually report on the event. Even the Boston Globe said, according to photographers, people rushed the gates. It's like, wow, everyone went home because they thought it was all over. That could not happen today. No one would dare do that. But it was around that time where I just tried to think about, what are the reactions to the news? What is the take home? So I at least tried to comment on the maelstrom of information and misinformation. One of the journals that inspired me a lot is Brill's Content, which was a journalism magazine that really quoted on things that were going on that other journalists were pissed about. Larry King passed away recently, right. And I remember, and I think I have an article that I still have to scan about the reaction to CNN when Larry King actually hosted the inauguration for George W. Bush back in 2001, and just how everyone was so fuming mad about that. I'm not trying to piss on Larry King's grave, but these are things.
Of course.
But I came from an area where it did really seem possible to be completely objective in journalism, and now with the advent of the internet and everything, including the arts, being such a niche market and it being so close cut, it seems to be an impossibility. And getting to what I've been doing in recent years, it's in 2015 I really started to look up and try and investigate various conspiracy YouTubers that were talking about like things that nobody else was talking about. I had been in the art scene for over 10 years at that time, and I knew that there was stuff that people didn't want to talk about. So that's how the conspiracy people get you in, by talking about the stuff that they claim no one wants to talk about because it's the unpretty stuff. I used to have that problem when I was doing like poetry seminars, when I was talking to people, and I would always, keep it above ground. But then when people were talking about me, and they're like, oh, so and so, what's his name? Only they stopped working in 1990. What happened? Well, there was a big fight, and someone allocated the funds to go travel when it was supposed to be. That was what's his name when so and so was supposed to go. So there was bad blood, and they just go, oh, I don't want to hear stories like that. But yet, that's the stuff that I think is important to say. Right. But unfortunately, that's probably more of an ear for gossip than anything. But I still think there's something important in that, because that's how friendships break. That's how scenes die. That's how poetry scenes suffer. But unfortunately, a conspiracy theorist, can get you in by any which way. And so between 2015 and 16, especially with Gamergate videos, I just started paying attention. I kind of saw the rise of the Trump base. Because it was just weird how they sacked me in, like in Gamergate. Oh, this journalist slept with like 5 people, and that's wrong. I'm like, yeah, I guess so. If it's true. And there's a lot of infighting in art groups and everything. I'm like, yeah, and that's why we should film Black Lives Matter protests and people burning down cars and everything and laugh at it from our white homes. I'm like, huh? like
what? What? How did they just get to that?
That's like
it's like steps. Reality TV. There's an aspect of that, there where it's like, did people like study to gauge their audience to see what, the reaction would be? And that's the kind of thing that you can kind of look at that and then like, what's going on here? There's something that's worth exploring why people are doing this.
And it was very interesting to me. And I'm like, okay, I finally got my cutoff time, but it was very interesting. I wouldn't say I was necessarily alert to it, but it definitely was. It's definitely a good feeling you get when you feel like there's some conspirator behind everything. Really, it's probably a lot more stupid, a lot more coincidental, and a lot more.
For example, it's like I could be listening to some Hasidic literature thing, and I'm taking, just imagine me in all my full glory, taking a shower, and I've been listening to Hasidic literature because I'm kind of listening to like a YouTube, lecture, and I'm scrubbing the hair, and I'm doing that, and I'm listening to some spiritual kind of talk thing, and then all of a sudden, boom, it interrupts to Sarah Palin about why why she's supporting some millionaire money marketing thing that she backs, and they're going to share the secrets with you, and they keep saying they're going to share the secrets with you for 10 minutes, and I'm like, why haven't I just gotten out of here and drying off and everything just to turn this off? This is bizarre because everything inside of me wants to just turn it off to go, skip ad, but I'm still listening. What's going on here?
It's weird how they lure you in, and I just started paying
That's
more
a real life example, by the way.
I believe it. Believe me, I believe it. And I've seen so many other examples like that, heard so many examples like that, where it's like, okay, I'm not on board anymore. And as a matter of fact, I feel kind of physically sick listening to this and I need to stop. And that's what happened to me. Like, I haven't heard a lot of conservative news. I've just heard a lot of the reactions. I've gotten a lot of the quotes, because it really physically affects you after a while, especially when you're hearing something that just isn't true. It's almost like a reality-based, like internal reaction, for lack of a better word. And in order for me to cope with that, that's when I started doing things like I started with Between the Headlines, which was a compilation of headline poems, so just like headlines taken from the internet and various news sites, and trying to stay abreast of things. But this is something that was very interesting with the Trump administration. They moved faster than even they could think. In other words, like, you could barely grasp what happened. This was the perfect example of a corporate
You mean
president.
with fake news, that traveling faster than things grounded in fact?
Well, also things grounded in fact, traveling alongside things not grounded in fact, traveling alongside with, say, the Fox News take or the Breitbart take of what's going on. And you're just sitting there going, what the hell is this going to mean to me? Like, what is happening? Trump was almost the perfect corporate president in terms of, like, I've worked for workforces that make you dread the weekends, because they'll start having like the Friday meetings and just like announce all this other stuff and dump it on you. And you're just like, oh God, how can I enjoy anything? All I want to do is my last bit of work and go home and listen to a YouTube concert. That's all I wanted them to do. And in a way, Trump was like that, multiplied 10,000 fold. Yes. So it's not even the news got filtered, and it's more unfiltered. It's more unfiltered information that I can't prove, but everyone else is still perpetuating. And and that's when I started quitting the Between the Headlines, because I'm like, I can't put these out fast enough. It takes me a couple hours to put these together, but by the time I'm doing this is not timely anymore.
Right. Because
it's just not.
It's just not. And that's the thing. And there's some interesting things that you mentioned here. One that comes to mind is that, that there's this fast pace of, relevancy. And how can people kind of examine and fully into the truth of something when it becomes no longer worth while to examine, to explore, to kind of sit with and see what is this, like you were saying, what does this mean to me? How is this going to affect me?
Well, the relevancy is already there. There's always going to be a relevancy, but the trick is that it makes like every truth that comes apart. Like if a new fact or quote fact comes in, then everything else that you want to say is irrelevant. Like if someone punches you right before a work shift, and then all of a sudden someone reports and says that you forgot to do, to the manager saying you forgot to do your work,
Of course, that is
but you hit me. Like you're stuck on the last thing, and the general thought from the bully or the mind fucker is that you really shouldn't be. But it's like, no, this really does matter. And that's why I came up with Tales of the Alt Blight, which was my collection of alternative news. I don't know how I ever got invited to this site. It's probably the same guy who subscribed me a 1-year copy of the Limbaugh newsletter after I graduated college. He's like, okay, it's time for him to enter the real world. And I had them for years until I lost them on a bus stop. I was going to write about them because a lot of what's happening right now is kind of like I don't want to say influences, but the bogeymen and the specters and the people who are prevalent voices, for better or for worse, of the 80s and 90s have come back to haunt us the last few years. It's something I think about as a Gen Xer. It's like, Jesus, maybe I should have run for office. I couldn't have fucking done any worse than half the people who have come through the system in the last 4 years. At least I would have studied and been qualified. I would have like learned something. But in a sense, it's just like all the other, I mean, that's probably why I'm partly obsessed with Trump too, because this is someone who is a family hero in terms of my mother and mother. My father saw him as a self-made man. I don't know what he would have thought getting into politics, but I have family members who, pretty much think he's God. It's like they have gone into the cult of personality. And I have not bought into this. I'm an exile. I'm an exile amidst New England. I'm a New Englander in exile because I don't give a fuck about Trump or Tom Brady. It's.
I must admit, I'm not too much into football.
Yeah, well,
I'm into. I like college sports.
College, I can see would be better. It's very funny because. It's very funny because like I'm not into football itself, and yet I'm so sick and tired of Tom Brady's saturation. And I've written poems about the symbolic nature of the Super Bowl. It's like, I still can't get over how no one's ever mentioned that, right after 9/11, the Patriots right when they started their games again, it was right before they went to the Super Bowl, but they lost to the Jets. Think about that for a minute. I wrote a sestina about it where it has mentioning of like, then it kicks the Panthers, the dissenting Panthers, and it takes on the Saints. And then like the last
Did you mention the Patriot Act in it?
I mentioned the Philadelphia Eagles, which was my last line was translation, only America can beat America. But my point is now we're going into Super Bowl Sunday next week.
Right.
And it's now Tom Brady, the ultimate Patriot,
has been reduced in the future. It's a little bit.
Yeah, he's been reduced to a thieving pirate, and now he's taking on this Kansas City Chiefs. It's like.
Would you share that poem with us? Yeah. Would you symbolize us away?
It's an older one, but I still post every now and then because it's just so, I see a crazy correlation between the rise of the Patriots as a dynasty and the rise of the jingoistic side of America over the last 20 years.
That would be a book I would like to read.
Yeah, I would like to write it, but I only have so many hours in the day, but I would love to. Oh, here we go. I might have to post this later, especially since I need a sequel. But so it's a sestina, and most sestinas are annoying, but at least this is a little history message too, and it's called "Go Team," with the question mark at the end of the title. 2005. I look for meaning in the Super Bowl. My hometown makes a deal. Cheer for the Patriots and will be led to riots or parades. Maybe both. I barely know the players. I focus on colors and symbols designed like a book of America, which may not exist. Was Written America replaced with DVDs, clipped like Super Bowl recaps, summer movie-like, tedious symbolism removed? They say true patriots need only the moral, only 3-second quips, a player's instruction between parades. The home team wins. I brace for more parades. My work commute blocked by jerseys, colored American. Already early tomorrow in Iraq, different players force themselves awake to catch the Super Bowl as it happens. Patriots cheering patriots. How appropriate. Symbols clashing for ourselves. No symbol ever substituting the stars and stripes. Here's a parade of millions standing alone. Did the word patriot exist before America? Before the Super Bowl, 9/11 followed with players assuming roles, players for Patriots first succumbing to New York Jets. Symbols fascinate me. Months after 9/11, Super Bowl and Patriots beat Holy Rams. Parades need more than God for a reason. America fills its chessboards with bishops and knights. Patriot games. Home rules everywhere. Last Super Bowl, the Patriots pre-election snubbed the Panthers, a symbol used by players who are not team players. America would rather stick with certain symbols. Diverse banners confuse a parade. Tonight,
Neither a fan nor with one, why follow this Super Bowl? This Super Bowl has both Eagles and Patriots. This parade, same side, two players. Symbols say only America can beat America.
Hmm. We do something here. We do snap, 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 clap, 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 round of applause.
I'm not gonna applaud for myself. That's like that's an Oscar thing, but thank you.
Right. Right.
Thanks to those who are watching and listening and verbally snapping.
So,
Or
you know, the
virtually.
last line again, that only America can beat America. What was it? And then there was another line about but can you read the last two lines, please?
This Super Bowl has both Eagles and Patriots. This parade, same side, two players. Symbols say only America can beat America.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, you know, I once, you know, I'm, for those of you who might not be familiar with, Jonathan Haidt, H-A-I-D-T, you know, a political philosopher and a political psychologist. He wrote the book, a few books. The Righteous Mind is one of them, of looking at the, from a moral psychology and looking at the it was for a class of a sociology class about the sociology of morality, and kind of looking at that politically, how different individuals could have such different beliefs. And this was a book that fascinated me. And in fact, I had the opportunity as an undergraduate to hear him speak. And in, what was it? Was it in 2018, I believe, he came and he spoke about the link between political polarization and social media as it relates to liberal arts colleges and in education in general, of higher education. And the first thing he said is that we don't need Russian bots. We do just fine on our own.
Yeah, very true. I mean, I think I think this totally proved the point. The events of the last few weeks have completely proved our point. I mean, which is why, even though there was a scandal with Russia, you know, it almost is a red herring, in the sense that, you know, there's a 1,000 other things that we could have focused on over the last few months, and instead it almost seemed to be that seemed to be the smallest player in an ever-growing expansion of people who are just seizing the public mindset and yet not really getting retribution, at least not yet. It's going to be interesting for the next few months. I mean, a lot of people are talking ditching Trump and moving on, but I don't think if the one person almost solely responsible for this, for everything that's happened, or at least the biggest enabler of it, walks away free, I don't think that's gonna.
Right, and there has to be precedents that's set. There has to be something that's set to show that this really isn't okay.
Yes.
You know, and I found that you know, I want to go back to kind of focus on, do you find that you'll ever be, let's say, doing work and it's like, I can't just do this. I'm somewhere else. I'm in another place. And how do you mitigate that and kind of find balance when you're all of a sudden being taken to, let's say, some sort of journalistic articles, or looking at the deep underbelly of the internet, or you're, let's say, you have in mind something of a poem. How do you go and focus back to be doing what you do for work? How do you do that? And does it become a challenge? How do you kind of mitigate the muse?
It's very challenging on a number of levels, but I see it as a total gym workout, in the terms of I have to exercise different muscles. And over the last few years, I
like that a lot. A gym workout.
It's exercising various muscles. And the poetry workout, I kind of learned this when I did a feature with a well-regarded, beloved older poet who had been around Stone Soup since the beginning. And I asked them for a bio. And while the poetry was amazing, I found said poet not able to construct full-length sentences. Like it was not anything like that. John Smith, not the real name, was born in Cranston, Rhode Island, and then graduated Harvard. It was like, oh, Cranston, grant poor John the wings which to just fly even waist high through. Like,
So it
I'm
was
like,
a
oh God,
poem?
I need to. We need sentences. We need noun, verb, direct object. Do we have
Right,
to draw a
yes.
sentence tree, because I don't remember how to do those. But it was, and I that kind of taught me early on that you kind of have to keep both working at the same time. You have to kind
Or
of
else
keep.
you could sound like a somewhat, in La La Land, so to speak.
It kind of feels that way anytime I try and make a political or a thesis point. I've actually gotten on Medium. Of course, Medium's where I publish the Tales of the Alt Blight, but I'm also trying to publish like one review a week and one article or one news piece is often, or news commentary piece. I work for Politics Means Politics, but they take my stuff. They found me on Medium and they said, hey, can we use this? And they like me, so I'm an expatriate because they're a British journal, and I'm the lone nut American voice, so I can't be the only one. But they loved articles about Trump, and I suspect they will for a while now because of the Trump effect spilling over to Boris, who looks like the worst cosplayer ever. Not Boris, you know who I'm talking about.
The prime minister, right?
Yes, the prime minister, who, like I said, Trump cosplayer, but he looks like he walked out of a Comic-Con, in a Trump outfit just to piss off all the Deadpool people. But it's that kind of effect. But to get back to your question, because I will distance myself from it just reflexively, as ramble.
I ramble too. I ramble on. I Led Zeppelin.
Yes. But let me get out of the mystic depths of Mordor and get to the point. I think just doing that all the time, because there are things in poetry that I would like to say outright that poetry doesn't really allow, in my belief, or at least in the system in which I've created poetry. And there are things that I can't really say or convey in a simple essay or a simple like think piece that poems do as well. That's why I loved one of my original aspects of my older job. I've been working at the same place for years. I do more hands-on work now, but before I used to help organize teaching groups, which meant I was writing full sentences that had to have points and had to have teaching points and I was leading talks to to potentially hundreds of people all across the nation. So I had to create teaching presentations and stuff like that. So
right, yeah, to do the whole world. Yeah,
that kept me strong for a long time. And since not doing that, I found I had to kind of express myself in other ways. Without these things, I wouldn't be able to do what I do, like as a whole. And it would probably drive me crazy not knowing why. But I'll tell you, like, if all you do is speak in poems, especially if you speak in a language poem thing, I swear to God, your noun, verb, direct object muscles start to atrophy big time. I kind of learned that.
Yeah,
I learned that big time.
Yes, I've found myself doing that as well. And that might be what happened to President Trump.
That would make him a poet, though. So I don't know if that thesis would work, but
I will, man, woman, child, TV, something happened there.
Right.
Something happened.
Well, that's someone who hasn't had to think long or hard about anything. That's someone who has basically is able to point. He's like a child. He's like a child who doesn't know how to convey, like, mama, please. Like kids when they're like in their infant stage, you'll see them go. Right. They'll point, yes. And that is Trump. And let's get away from Trump. But this is Trump. This is Trump.
And it's a good thing that we'll have people that will be able to convey sentences that I'd like that because of this, and it benefits in this way. And we're moving more towards that, which is great.
Yeah, but we're also getting to the fact where people could, you know, would probably be more effective liars. So we have to be very careful of that. You know, we have to be careful of the people who are in power, we have to be careful of the people who are in power now, because in some ways they are still responsible, at least partly, for the 4 years of mess that we have now. I mean, unpopular opinion, I think Hillary Clinton is equal to blame, because she was the worst candidate humanly possible, you know, and I hate that. I'm not saying that necessarily.
I love Hillary Clinton. And what I don't love also is that the surety and the not good campaigning, and as though of not taking it as seriously as it
Yeah.
could have been. It should have.
Yeah. And I just thought it was wrong. I mean, but we haven't had anything like Trump before, but someone should have said, you know, I mean, whatever skeletons most politicians have in their closet, Hillary, thanks to her husband, has a mass grave. Has a mass grave thanks to her husband, who has been accused of rape in several books, and it's never been fully put to rest. So if you're having someone who has the money to like have all of Bill Clinton's accusers at the debate, you know, you should have looked at that and said, oh God, we are in fucking deep shit. Like we now have someone who has the power to, and the crassness to bring up this stuff before. But in addition to the campaigning, yeah, she could have taken it more seriously. When I saw that the campaign might have been between Bush and Clinton again, I'm like, I'm not a big fan of dynasties. You know, I'm the worst New Englander. Fuck the Kennedys. Like, we don't need Kennedys. We don't need people out of sense of obligation. My favorite Kennedy is the one who started George Magazine like 10, 20 years ago, died in the plane crash. I liked his journal. He actually put out something of use, which I actually enjoyed. But I don't like dynasty people who are just entitled to do this because, well, you know, I got a leg up, and I hate the legs up. I hate the legs up. And like, let's get
because
the
then
people who are ground up.
And I think that there's might be something going on. You know, I do think that Bill Clinton was a great president of other things, of just, you know, other than there are certain personal things. I think that he's a great individual, of like, he's a smart, intelligent man with the way of certain things. But I do think that there's something to be said about dynasty building and commercialism, and this sort of thing of you have a brand names. And I think that there's something there as well. And I wonder if even in a way in you know, and maybe there's some way of looking at this also in the poetry scene, of you have brands of, you know, you have of individuals look at poets even of, oh, well, you know, you have the Whitman, and then you have the Yeats, and then you have the this or the that, and then you have the silly Ginsberg, and you have the, you know, and you have different things, and as well as less of people kind of writing like, oh, this is only going to be taken in one place, for example, and you know, poetry kind of becomes categorized and branded in a way.
And but that at least, thanks, because it's poetry. I agree with everything you're saying, but thankfully, as new generations come into power, I don't know what the challenge is probably worse now in schools and colleges, because everyone is untenured contractor going from place to place, so it's hard to establish your heroes. But at least there's a generational thing where it's like you're gonna get someone who wants to teach English literature, and they're gonna be like, I don't want to teach Ginsberg. You know, I'm fucking 18. You know, he was dead when I was born. Like, I want to teach the heroes I have right now. I want to learn more about this guy or that. I don't want to speak on behalf of 18-year-old. I want to talk about Gorman. I want to talk about Amanda Gorman. Why don't we get Elizabeth? What about Elizabeth Alexander? I remember hearing her inaugural poem, you know, during Obama's inauguration. Why not those people? And I mean, that's why there was an interview with Dennis O'Neil for the Comics Journal. He was the editor of and writer of some of the Batman books, and he was also a sci-fi writer. And they said, and he credited the generations, like, you know, yeah, sci-fi was discredited when I was, younger, but the young people grew up and they got jobs and they were able to actually teach about sci-fi and it got into the curriculum. That's why people know about Harlan Ellison. So I think that the downside of what you're saying is that hopefully not, but now it's getting tougher for that. So of course everyone's just going to have their book of Shakespeare and the Beats, or Yeats, just for a go-to, and that should be stopped at all times. I'm not saying don't respect the classics, but
no, of course I'm not saying don't respect the classics.
I didn't think you were either, but I'm more acerbic in my voice, so I just want to make sure people aren't thinking. And I've said fuck the Kennedys and fuck Tom Brady in the same interview, so I don't want people to think I'm pissing on Shakespeare or Ginsberg, who I love.
Yeah.
I read Howl when I was in San Francisco for the first time ever. I was actually walking the Golden State Bridge, potentially getting hit by bikers or whatnot, just reading Howl and like the entirety of Howl. I gave myself that journey and it was awesome. But yeah.
Interesting. Yes. So I wonder, do you have a poem about that? About that experience by any chance?
Let's see. The closest I got to.
Or about
there is one I have, and it was a sonnet for Ginsberg. It was shortly after he died, and I'd read Howl. This is in grad school, and I had I had a free ticket. My mom and dad were like, "Hey, we got frequent flyer miles. Where you want to go?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'll go to San Francisco for a week. Why the hell not?" And that's where I really got into. That's where I tried to get more into Ginsberg. I'd gotten to him a little bit, but my teacher was from the generation of Frank O'Hara, Alan Feldman.
I have the 50th anniversary edition of Howl as my coffee table.
Nice. So this one I wrote shortly after he died, and it was just ironic that I write a sonnet for him. But he seemed to be the most unstructured poet. Though if you look at his linear notes and just like his rough drafts, you can see that wasn't quite the case at all. Sonnet for Ginsberg. I could put my gutter mouth to the wheel, or write lines so long they could link around this page. But I figure with all the cloning tributes, you'd appreciate my own lines. And I'll give you honesty, which you might appreciate more. I heard of your death 3 days after the fact. I spent the weekend finding an argument to feel less homeless, serving huddled tables of customers, watching everyone lose the human war. Once at Mass Ave, the smell of a steaming manhole made me think of gym socks. Then I thought if Levine were here, he'd imagine the souls of countless workers who had to return to their families unclean. Were Simic to take a whiff, he might declare, "This is Satan farting." I felt inferior then for my own image, but after you died, I thought it would work fine, and started writing, not wanting to be in my right mind.
Nice. Snap, snap, snap. Clap, clap, clap. Round of applause.
You're getting all the oldies but goodies. That was written. That was written back in '98 when I graduated. So or around the time of graduation.
Nice.
So yeah, you're getting all the vintage chat for now.
Yes.
Oh, 97. Sorry.
97. We'll see if I might forgive you. It might take a few years. Fair enough. Indeed. Yeah. And there's that you gave us honesty. And there's that thing of this raw thing that people want honesty. And I feel that, do we want honesty, or do we really just want to be entertained and think that there's honesty?
I think people want their own honesty, recalled back to them. And that could be for a number of reasons. It could be because they have very limited political beliefs and just want them parroted back, or it could be because they came from an isolating family or isolating hometown life, and they just want someone to speak about that as well. It can be very tough to hear another person's truth if it's not the one that you even partly came from. But I prefer the honest stuff no matter who it comes from, because if someone is truly outraged over something or like truly angry over something, or at least has honest emotions about it, has been burned once by people who they try to be accepted by, you know, you can get a lot more out of that than you can by someone who I feel, you know, who I totally agree with on point.
Right,
Although I gotta say, I don't know if I agree with anyone point on point, which is why I probably like sparked up
right.
when you talked about, oh, I'm writing this poem for this. And, you know, I've just kind of decided that I can't write for any one place. Anytime I've tried, 9 times out of 10, it just generally fails for me. I literally submitted to a journal where I kept on seeing their taglines on Twitter. It's like, we want everyone. We want old, young. We want black, white,
No,
gay.
no, you don't. You don't want everyone, and that's the truth, you know?
And I got the quickest rejection letter. I'm like, we want everybody. We want your voices. We love it. We love sending out
Except you.
acceptance letters. Yeah, except I send some back like, nah. It's like, okay. I get a picture of a leave, you know, like okay. I know, but you know, these open arms, and then it's just like it's
Yeah.
so being slapped out is so contradictory to me. And I've just decided that the most important person is me to a certain extent. I mean, I can try and say, oh, this person will like that. I mean, every once in a while I'm like, you know, this journal likes this, so they'll probably like that. And I wrote it anyway. So I'm going to send it to them. But 9 out of 10 times it just doesn't work. I don't know what it is I'm missing, but I just have to be in favor of me, because to even try and write something for someone else. I mean, I remember working with an editor almost 10 years ago, and there was this poem when ultimately it got published. I felt awful about it. There was one poem that they accepted outright, but it was a poem that had been workshopped.
Isn't it weird? Doesn't it sometimes feel as though that the readers can be silly? Like, yeah. Why do you like this instead of this? Like, what's wrong with you? There's this weird thing that goes through your mind that then will try to psych yourself out.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And then when the editor said, "Oh, I like, how about you change it like this?" I'm like, and I did exactly her changes, and I sent it back. She goes, "Yes, this is much better." I'm like, "You're complimenting your own changes, like you're basically complimenting yourself." And I don't know.
It's like that professor or that teacher that you have in high school or college. That's like, yes, where you did exactly what they wanted, and it's like, yes, it's like, yeah. I found my best work of essays and things were when I completely did the exact opposite of what the professor wanted. And I get like, you know, instead of getting like, if it's really bad, you would get like a D or like a C, but no, you get, and then a B+ or something, which means that it's actually really good, because it's above average, or it's average, but it doesn't follow anything. And that's how you actually know something's really good.
Right. These are the things that can mess you up for a long time. I remember I had a lot of rejections. I found out what an ass kicking was when I went to Emerson and had my stuff workshopped for the first time by people I didn't, mostly by people I didn't know. And one of the teachers, was actually surprised at how much I had written in like a 2 or 3 week time. And they were like, "Do you always write this much?" And I think what they were trying to do is like, try and tell me to just stop a little bit and take time, because my stuff just wasn't hitting, which was a valid point. Right. But then I would take another class with them, and I would be doing all-nighter to spit out a term paper about Elizabeth Bishop and Robert Lowell, and that got an A. And I'm like, if I can do this when I'm barely cognizant, I probably put periods before the sentence, and this gets an A, that messes you up more than anything when you get complimented for work that you find subpar, and that messes you up so bad. And I just time and validation of your own voice is the only cure for it. But how many people stop writing after that?
Right. So speaking of self-validation and howling into the wind of off the Golden Gate bridge, you know, with banging a gong and watching Netflix's the Chicago 7 and saying, walking across somewhere into something. And let's do the OTSCP on the spot collaborative. I told you it was going to be an awkward, that might have been the most awkward lead-in that I've ever done for that.
I knew it was happening. Maybe you should explain for your readers what the abbreviation stands for.
It's the on the spot collaborative poem, OTSCP. I have Chad here, of course, and I have him hogtied, and I have me here. And what we are going to do is Chad has a few books out. I have a few books out, and they were taken at random. And again, you know the name of the game. We're going to go wherever our eyes gaze and piece together our own little new lines from individual words that we see in front of us. And we're going to go back and forth until it becomes a masterpiece, or a masterpiece, as we like to say here. So Chad, what books do you have, names, authors, page numbers for us today?
I have, well, to name drop a little bit, my first book comes from Rick McIntyre, a local poet, Man at the Door. And his pages are 26 and 27 from his collection, Man at the Door. Then I have the ultra rare, but I should send you a copy because I think you would dig his work. I've talked about him enough on Stone Soup videos, of Rare Design by Bill Barnum. You can get Man at the Door online. You can't really get this online unless you get from a collector who's going to charge you like $500 for it. But I can give it to you. I can give it to anyone who writes me for nothing, or just sending me $10 for postage and handling. So
Okay.
because I have a whole box of them given to me from the family when he passed away a couple of years ago.
Oh, wow. And
So
what page do you have that out to?
I have that up to pages 28 and 29, open spread eagle.
Okay.
And the last one comes directly from my box that I have to empty out from moving. It's called A Object of Beauty from the comedian Steve Martin, who became a novelist. I actually like his books. This one is at pages 174, 175.
Nice. Okay. And are those the three you have out?
Those are the three I have out. What do you got?
I have out, I have Walt Whitman, whoever that is, and it's Leaves of Grass, and I have it to A Song of Joys. So that's so it's 142 and 143. I have out another guy, never heard of him before, James Joyce, right? And it's the 1934 text, the corrected and reset in 1961. I have it out to pages 318 and 319. And then I have out Ellen Mabey, The Cowardice of Amnesia, to pages 26 and 27. So that's the last page of a long poem, Wanna Be a, what is that? Yeah, it's a long poem, Wanna Be a Stripper, and then to How I Became a Record Collector. Okay.
Very nice.
So you know the name of the game. Would you like to begin?
So no more than 2 words at a time, and just throw
Or
them
just
out.
it can be more than 2, just a few words, and string
Okay.
together a new line by piecing
got it.
together. But no more than 2. I try to find of 2 that are in a linear order.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll start now with your hair.
Okay.
And just keep on going.
Yeah. Just keep on going. Yeah.
Your vices. The crooks.
Behold, floods. Born, busy.
And if under arrest. Afraid of clock. Don't explain.
towering joys, I became jig time, portobello, cheers at daybreak.
Authority, finality, mosquitoes ping.
Over fields of the Reverend Love himself, handed artillery man societies.
I feel like I have to top that. Hang up. Plausibility. Nancy Drew.
Tough travel in the agility of liberally gamey mistake.
Enemies closer. Hurt, wronged. Takes to hate.
The fireman's joke.
Lacey got serious. Started years ago. And
Sympathy of cool God rules under man.
through snow, July 4th. No connection.
To work month to month, machines and their dust stripping.
Rendered implausible. Produce the body. Back to the bins.
I think that's a good ending. The bins, produce, rendered impossible, produce the body, back to the bins.
Now we got to finish. Now we go back and finish this book. It's been stuck
Exactly,
in our,
that's what it's supposed to do, to promote literacy.
yes.
Yeah, 1 page at a 2 pages at a time for each.
And I'll tell you,
Well, thank you so much, Chad. And of course, what will we call that? What will we call that masterpiece or masterpiece?
How about Monster Piece?
Monster Piece. It's called
There we go.
Monster Piece. Okay.
Let's do that.
We'll do the monster mash to that, even though it's not even close to October. Well, thank you so much, Chad. It's a pleasure having you on. Any links, whatnot, shout outs you'd like to do? Any last final words before you go into that good night of internet void?
Well, for those of you who are not viewing this, who are not viewing this on the web, you can view my website, Chad Parenteau, Poet for Hire. My last name is spelled Parenteau. It's not Italian, but everyone thinks it is the way I pronounce it. Woonsockets buried their French heritage by making everything sound Italian because they were cooler. I think The Godfather was coming out. So that's Chad Parenteau, poetforhire.com, which gives out links to everything that's published new. The cover page always gives out the new stuff. There's pages to old stuff, old prose, and hopefully future events, which will be coming up. And the news section always details the Stone Soup Poet of the Week, which is a little late this week, but the news will be popping up tomorrow morning. It's going to be Joseph Scoot Mosby, aka Scoot, featuring this Wednesday, and he's a poet and rap battle artist. So I hope even if this doesn't come out on time for you to catch it live, it will be on YouTube, as is most of my stuff. You can just look up my name on YouTube, and I have the most eclectic collection of poetry videos and the videos of my sister's pug just lying around. So it's an experience, and anyone who wants to traffic themselves over there, I'm very appreciative.
Well, thank you so much, Chad. I did think you were Italian. It's good to know that. Thank you. Thank
It's
you so much.
Parenteau. I've heard it pronounced 17 different ways.
Parenteau. Okay,
in New Orleans, I think I heard 5 or 6 pronunciations in all honesty.
okay. Well,
And so, yeah.
thank you so much, Chad Taranta.
And yes.
Okay, let's wave.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.